Welcome back, and today I'm going to talk about a non-fiction book this time, and we're going to do Factfulness by Hans Rosling and his son and his wife, Anna and Ola Rosling. Reasons why we're wrong about the world and why things are better than you think, which is definitely something that you need during these times. We need a little bit of hope in our lives, guys. So I'm going to just read the blurb, give you a little bit of an idea of what it's really about. So, Factfulness, the stress-reducing habit of only carrying opinions for which you have strong supporting facts. I wish everybody would have factfulness. So, when they ask simple questions about global trends, what percentage of people around the world are living in poverty, why the global population is increasing, how many girls finish school, we systematically get answers wrong. So wrong that chimpanzee choosing answers at random will consistently outguess journalists, Nobel laureates, and investment bankers. Now that actually really surprised me. It's like they basically did, like, statistically, you'd only get it wrong about like 25% of the time, but these like really educated people are getting it wrong. We're getting it wrong more than that. So yeah, that definitely shows that it's not just like by chance. There's something there's a systematic mindset among all of them. In Factfulness, Professor of International Health and Global TED phenomenon Hans Rosling, together with his two longtime collaborators, Anna and Ola, offers a new radical explanation for why this happens and reveals the 10 instincts that distort our perspectives. It turns out that the world, for all its imperfections, is a much better state than we might think. But when we worry about everything all the time, instead of embracing a worldview based on facts, we can lose our ability to focus on the things that threaten us the most. Inspiring and revelatory, filled with lively anecdotes and moving stories, Factfulness is an urgent and essential book that will change the way you see the world. And I think I agree with that because, I was reading this during the pandemic and it definitely makes you just kind of appreciate the change, like how things slowly do get better. So I'd like to walk you through some of the 10 instincts that he talks about. So the first one is the gap instinct. The gap instinct is basically thinking that reality is polarized. It's binary. It's either this or it's that. When really, in reality, it's really not. There's such a wide range. And he advises to put our kind of binary thinking into perspective. He advises that you must look for where the majority lies. Is the majority really on those two extreme opposite ends, or is it somewhere in between? Or is it really spread out? I just wanted to have a kind of show you how there are kind of neat little summaries and bullet points at the end of each chapter. So it kind of gives you a few pointers that you can use in your everyday life. You don't have to think about every single word on this page because although it is quite easy to read and digest, I think those little bullet points is some phrases that you can carry around and remember in your head. And there's also like a really nice analogy of when we think about development, we tend to think about either being rich or poor, developing, the rich north and the poor south. But he gives us quite nice another perspective into how to think about development. A nice analogy about levels, kind of like levels in a game. And of course there's really nice colourful pictures, which always makes things fun. And I think it's a better way of showing how even within each country there is such a vast difference in quality of life. And these little pictures about how life looks like also gives you an idea about just how there's not such a big difference. I mean there are, but when you look at each level, it's very subtle changes that define moving up into each level. Instinct number 2 is the negativity instinct, or what I would like to call being a pessimist. It basically addresses sensationalism in the media and how they really tend not to cover good news, positive news, and it tends to just be all about the bad news. And so we get this very negative worldview. We just think things are getting worse and worse, and just kind of depressing. In order for us to combat our pessimistic tendencies, it's better to expect bad news. And I think there's this really key, important thing that he says, and it's that things can be both better and bad. Better than before, but obviously still not what we want. It's still not great. It's still bad. Now, the third instinct is the straight line instinct. And I think we've all seen our fair share of graphs over this pandemic. So I think this is really important, especially as, data, statistics is becoming quite a large part in our lives. I also like to call the straight line instinct the y equals mx without the plus c. All you maths nerds out there, yes, I delivered on that. Throughout the book, Rosling disperses a lot of his own anecdotes into this, and some of the stories are really, really quite interesting. You really just see how these instincts can be put into real life cases, real life decision making, and just how powerful controlling these instincts can be. I think the straight line instinct is also really nice to kind of work on your graph skills, because there's quite a lot of data graphs in this book, and don't worry, because he walks you through each and every one of them, so it just fine-tunes your data analytical skills, which I think everyone should develop. He emphasizes that in order to overcome the straight line instinct, he emphasizes that straight lines are actually quite rare in real life, and to remember that curved graphs come in all different shapes, including S-bends, humps, or doubling lines. The straight line might look like a simple, x equals y, as x increases, y increases at the same rate, but actually it could be a doubling line. So you have to really look carefully at the data. The fourth instinct I'd like to talk about is the fear instinct. And I think this goes hand in hand with the negative instinct, because it's really hard to really put your perspective into proportion, really. I think he makes a key point about, what is fear versus reality. I just remember watching this really interesting video recently, which highlights just how, when there's an airplane accident, it sends shockwaves around the world. The news always covers it. The news broadcasters always cover those stories. Whereas there's like car accidents every single day, and thousands of people die from them. And we somehow never hear about those things. Nobody really doesn't send as much of a shockwave. And even though we're more likely to, get hurt or die in a car accident than in, a plane crash or something, we still fear planes so much more, and we're seemingly so much more unfazed by cars. And I think Rosling really brings up that point about, in order to put your fear into perspective, it's really important to calculate the risks. He defines risks as risk is equal to the dangerousness times the exposure to that, whatever risk hazard. Number 5 is the size instinct. It's a really cute elephant. And I think this is key in overcoming being swayed by misleading statistics. He says that when you see a really impressive but lonely figure, maybe a very, very small number or a really, really large number, it's really important that you compare it against other figures. Like what your teachers might say, Don't only focus on one source, have a look at multiple sources. Or even divide. I think it's really important, and it's just how rates and rates of change tell you much more about something than just a single amount or a single number. Because rates also take into account the time scale. Number 6 is the generalization instinct. I think this is just really important especially when these days everything is put into categories, and he really kind of reminds you just how arbitrary these categories are. These are, someone made them. It's not inherent, and that it's really important for you to question your categories. He also really points out that you really have to remember what kind of majority is the majority that you're looking at. Are you looking at a 51% majority or a 99% majority? Because those two majorities are very different. Number 7 is the destiny instinct. In my next life, I would also want to be a rock, by the way. So the destiny instinct is definitely another way of being old-fashioned, I think. It's really the epitome of being a pessimist and unchanging. And it's really the only way to combat is to embrace a growth mindset. I think it's a really handy message emphasizing that just because you have been accustomed to having a fast-paced lifestyle and fast change and fast internet and fast public transport and TV or whatever, that not everything changes so quickly, and that is actually the things that are most human, I guess, mindsets, culture, and language, which change the slowest, which is kind of ironic, really. Like how we really, really yearn for having fast internet, just everything being quick and convenient, yet it is us who are the slowest to change. But he reminds us that, luckily, even slow change is change. Number 8 is the single perspective instinct. This is all about being open-minded and welcoming other perspectives into things and not just your own. I think it's really easy to be trapped in your echo chamber, just hearing your own views being called back, echoing back onto you. And it's just being willing to challenge your own ideas. I think I was watching this really cool video about the nature and the psychology behind conspiracy theories, and I think a really important point that they made was that what will make you not believe something, and if there's nothing that can't make you unbelieve it, then you really have to question how strong of a belief you have in it. I don't think you shouldn't believe anything so strong that nothing can kind of argue against it. And there's also another really important fact, I think, especially as someone who really values numbers, loves statistics, loves maths, is that numbers are not the be-all and end-all. Not everything can be quantitative. There's a reason there's qualitative data as well, and that just because a number says something, it doesn't give you the full picture. I think a really nice quote that I like was, "Welcome complexity. Combine ideas. Compromise. Solve problems on a case-by-case basis. You can't apply the same solution to every problem." Number 9, the blame instinct. This, I find the blame instinct something it's a bit sad, and it's just doesn't help address the problem at all, and it's basically about finding a scapegoat to kind of blame a problem for instead of actually addressing what the causes are. He really urges you to make a clear distinction between the cause of something and a scapegoat, and also don't try and villainize someone, because there's always sometimes there's not only one root cause of a problem most of the time. There's a range of things. It's the whole kind of accumulation of all these small little causes that add up to make that problem, and you can't just villainize one person for that. And he also makes a big the other way around, and that is not to glorify someone for solving a problem necessarily, because there's a difference between a hero and a system. And most oftentimes it's not just that one person who made things better, it's the whole system. I think good analogies were like with the NHS, it's not just one doctor that makes a difference, it's the whole system that provides our healthcare and treats us. So, thank you, doctor, but also thank the entirety of the NHS team. Number 10 is the urgency instinct. Now, this is basically getting your hormones under control, guys. It's just not letting your panic steer you away from the concrete data and facts. It's reminding you to just breathe, relax before you take any big decisions. Take small steps because they add up. Instead of rushing to make one big decision, which you might not be able to reverse. I think that's really important because sometimes, this is something that everyday people can do, not just world leaders. When you're making a decision, just question whether you're doing it out of haste. But you have to remember that most of the time you actually have more time than you think you do. So take those small steps. So really, I think this book is more about critical thinking. I'm sure it gives you a lot of insight into geography and development, but it's really about critical thinking and knowing how your tendencies to favour your biases one way or the other. And I don't think you can ever have too much of critical thinking books. I think they're really important. Now, just some further reading and food for thought. I'll link all these in the description below as well, so you can explore it at your own pace. So first of all, the whole idea of this book came from these 13 questions that the Roslings asked to these really educated people, and I think they put it out there just so anybody can test their own perceptions of the world. So I had to go at these because they're at the start of the book as well. And honestly, I wasn't too bad. I think I was better than those really educated people, but that's because I did do geography as well, so I kind of had an idea of some things. But I definitely did not get all of them correct. So I think it's just have a go at these questions because it really gives you something to be hopeful about and really maybe surprise you a little bit as well. And I also put a link to some of Hans Rosling's really inspiring TED Talks. I think the way you can tell how passionate he is about this, and I think it's just a really good watch. And there's also a link to Anna Rosling's website, Dollar Street, which gives you these really beautiful coloured pictures of how life is at the different levels. And I also link the website to Gapminder, which is where there's lots of these really, really beautiful bubble charts about life expectancy and PNI. So overall, combined with the really, really beautiful visuals and Rosling's humorous tone, it's a really easy read, and I would definitely recommend it to everyone. I think we can all gain a little bit of positivity from this that we all need. It's really refreshing. So thank you for watching, and please do like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Remember, keep looking within the words.